Okay, so we might have people show up, I'm not sure. So let's get on with it. So this is a talk, discussion around, let me just check that that's live. Whoops, goes my tissue. Let me just check that. Make sure we're live. Any time today would be nice. Thank you. That's not on there. Let's have a look. We are live. Excelente. Okay. So, Ishtar. A deity that I suppose we started connecting with her in, when did she do the artwork? 2021, I think, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, 2021. I don't recall doing any work before that with her. But certainly since Ian did the artwork, we've been connecting with her more. And yeah, discovering things like when we did the last ritual with her. That was the pathwaking meditation where you go through the back of the head. And I was playing the lyre harp through that meditation. And it brought up a song in Ian. And yeah, so she definitely likes the lyre harp without question. Because it just took us somewhere completely different. I have much notage. So, Ishtar, who is in the Sumerian pantheon, is Inanna, so they're the same. But she was the main Mesopotamian goddess, and she's associated, amongst other things, with love and war. And she's the first known deity for which there is any written evidence. So I suppose, you know, for the amount of, my words were going to go a bit clunky there. Yeah, the time in which she was, which was something like, I think, if I remember rightly, it was 4000 BC, something like that. I know it was, you know, a long time ago. It might have even been before that. You know, considering how long ago that was, it's actually quite amazing that we've got any information about her at all. But she had a very powerful influence on, you know, the daily lives of the religions and cultures in that area of Mesopotamia. And that went on for thousands of years. And they reckon that the reason that she kind of dropped off the radar was because the cuneiform kind of stopped. They stopped. You know, whatever it was that stopped that language from being used was what stopped Ishtar's reign, if you like. But I think, I don't know if most people know her name. It was certainly interesting when I just just to see what would happen. I typed in her name into Google, and all manner of things came up with her name attached to it. For example, there's a 5-star luxury hotel that bears her name. Restaurants. There's this whole thing at the moment about, is Easter being named after Ishtar? So there's a whole debate about that going on at the moment. What else? Films. There was a film which apparently flopped at the cinema because it wasn't very good. I don't know. I've never seen it, but it's just interesting. A bit like the idea that Tutankhamun had with his name. So every time someone speaks his name, his energy ripples through space and time in the big ball of timey-wimey stuff, and he is still here. So in Ishtar's name still being used in all these different ways, and I'll speak a little bit about other things as well. She's still alive, so it's really interesting. So her name, her presence was so powerful that her name literally came to mean goddess. You can't get much higher than that, really. Her Sumerian name, Inanna, means Lady of the Heaven. And her Syrian name, Astarte, translates to star. It's got the word star in it, funny enough. But she has many other names and aspects, including Hathor, Anat, and I don't know how you pronounce this, Kutchu, possibly that's how you pronounce it. The Phoenicians had Asherat or Ashtoreth. The Phrygian Sibyl, which is really interesting because we watched that Doctor Who episode with the priestesses of Sibyl. So that's a little synchromistic thing there. And obviously the Greek Aphrodite. Most of those deities share the legends of the dying and resurrected lovers. You could also put Isis in there as well. Because, funny enough, the underworld version of Ishtar has wings. So, again, that connects with Isis. She is sometimes portrayed as a nurturing mother, protector, and a very loving deity. But the Babylonian Ishtar, she's a little bit deeper than that. For the most part, because she was part of the sacred prostitution ideal, she is known as extremely sexual. She's also vengeful. That comes out later on in my notes. Power hungry and a little bit militant. So she is the goddess of love, fertility, but also war. As in a justice type of warrior, as opposed to just randomly going around killing people. So in icons, and funny enough, we've got one on our front door. We've got a picture of Ishtar on our front door, and someone knocked on the door. One of our friends knocked on the door and said, "What's this, a knocking shop?" It's like, no, it's not a knocking shop. It's Ishtar. Don't you know anything? This is someone who is supposed to have done the great work. It's like, don't you know anything? Anyway, so she usually appears naked or scantily clad. And there is a reason for that, which I will get to later. She is often depicted with weapons as well, or a crescent moon emblem, and there are also reasons for those. She is sometimes portrayed with wings, so that's the underworld version of Ishtar, or riding a lion. But she grants great passion, free love, and sexual pleasure, pregnancy, an abundant harvest, victory in battle, and power to her faithful followers. So hence why because one of her symbols is the eight-pointed star. So she's not just the goddess of the heavens and the stars, she's also of the earth, because she brings those elements of fertility and abundance. So she's the daughter of the moon god Nana, not banana.
Oh, hell the banana.
Oh, hell the banana. In some myths, she also appears as the daughter of the sky god Anu, or the daughter of Enki, which is really interesting. In any of the research that I've done around Enki and Enlil, Ishtar's name has not come up. So it's quite interesting, that little bit of extra information. Ishtar's sister, Ereshkigal, I think that's how you pronounce it, is goddess of the underworld. And they did not like each other at all. And that their rivalry was, the topic of many Babylonian stories, apparently. So the ruling classes of Mesopotamia are said to have been established by the sky god Anu. So bear that in mind, yeah. So the king was called En, which meant Lord. And besides ruling over the people and leading the military and doing all those things that a leader does, an En also had priestly duties. So he was literally, so the father is a priest to his daughter. Does that make sense? So he's Ishtar, the daughter of Anu, was then the one that was revered and who gave blessings to the royalty. So it's quite an interesting little circle going on there. So the En served as an intermediary between the gods and the people, and was actually considered to be partly divine themselves. The En, the Lord, yeah. And of his many duties, he was expected to annually participate in the divine marriage, it was called. It was a ceremony which I think, if I remember rightly from what I read, involved statues. What they would do was put the two statues in a bed, and because they believed that the gods and goddesses were inside the statues, then that would create the divine marriage. So it was said of Inanna, hence Ishtar, that the affections of the goddess held a legitimizing function for kings. So don't really see that in Britain, do we? Really? I don't think. Maybe, no, I suppose, but in the past, the church kind of validated the crown. What do you think?
Well, I definitely say you'd see it nowadays.
You do see it nowadays.
I would say so.
I don't know about that. With all the shit they get up to, I don't know about that. So yeah, the concept was so that a king was king by love of Inanna or Ishtar. So that's kind of the earliest origins of a political hierarchy. um, so the evidence, the written evidence for Ishtar comes from Mesopotamia, um, which is the kind of ancient Near East. It's said that geographically it's between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. But obviously everyone debates about that because no one actually knows. And obviously it was home to many of the world's first great empires, including the Akkadians, Babylonia, and the Assyrian empires. So Ishtar's significance on her impact on the images and cults of later goddesses was quite far-reaching. So, everything from the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite, all the way to, what would be a modern
Modern what?
modern version of Aphrodite, if there is one. I don't know if there is one, is there?
Well, that'd be in icons, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Idols.
Yeah, idols.
So, Madonna.
Yeah.
They all appear the old Hollywood stars.
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe, Greta Garbo. Diana would probably come around that.
Yeah.
There we are, Diana. Today, Kate Middleton would represent that. Is Aphrodite, yeah? She's the goddess of love.
Well, I'm talking about Ishtar, but yeah, Aphrodite was an example of the impact that Ishtar had.
Well, I think in all the arts and crafts, like with the muses, the muses probably were the real expression of Ishtar.
Mm-hmm.
Bargaining with the muses.
Yeah.
Even like a society that is hedonistic, I would say was an expression of Ishtar.
Yeah. So there are quite a lot of sources for
Britannia, do you know?
Yeah. I don't know much about that deity, to be honest. So the dog's just doing something. I don't know what he's doing. So yeah, the sources for the Ishtar. They're not a whole. It's not like one book all about Ishtar. So they're quite fragmented.
Well, I think that's the thing about modern society and looking back through time. It's a very different.
Yeah, you don't have the context.
Yeah, you don't have the idea of where a deity comes from. So you say, um, like through like a film or through a play.
Yeah.
Like the Greek tragedies, kind of talked about a lot of the deities of that time. So who's to say that what's the method of channeling for these? Because these deities are energies; these are aspects of frequencies
Yeah.
that people are tuning into.
Yeah. So two definite sources for Ishtar stories is the Smurf, what do you lay down? The Epic of Gilgamesh and Ishtar's descent to the underworld. So the Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the earliest known works of epic literature. And the story tells of the journey of the young hero Gilgamesh, who's a semi-divine king of the city of Uruk. So in the standard Babylonian version, Ishtar appears prominently in Tablet 6, apparently, where Gilgamesh is described bathing and cleaning his weapons after doing battle with the forest guardian Humbaba. At an earlier point in the narrative, Ishtar sees the young king's beauty and looks at him like covetously and proposes marriage and offers some nice inducements to sweeten the deal, but Gilgamesh is not interested. He doesn't want anything to do with her, and he makes the questionable choice of rejecting her quite harshly in unflattering terms, and he compares her to a drafty back door, a faulty battering ram, and a shoe which bites the feet of its owner. And this last one might sound really funny, but back then, this was quite an ominous thing to say. Is in ancient divination, an abrasion from an ill-fitting sandal was considered to be a portent, with potentially fatal consequences. So that wasn't good. And Ishtar is shown to be quite, distressed about being called these things, and she travels to the heavens to visit the sky god Anu, her father, and allegedly through the threats and emotional blackmail, she persuades the elder god to loan her the bull of heaven. And her plan is to use the mighty bovine warrior to seek revenge on Gilgamesh. So Anu finally agrees, and Ishtar leads the bull back to Earth. And this bull battles against Gilgamesh and his companion, Enkidu. Quite a cool name, that. I think I'd like to be called Enkidu. But the two heroes kill the great beast, and Ishtar mourns over its body with the women of the city. The other story is Ishtar's descent into the underworld.
So what you could suggest there? So that's from, because in the Minoan society that they did the jumping of the bull. So young people, predominantly men, would paint themselves red.
Okay.
And jump, like the ball would run towards them.
Yeah.
And they would jump over the ball.
Okay.
So the modern phenomenon of that is bullfighting, so, which depicts, so the matador is the god, and the bull is the bull of the heavens. So they're kind of enacting that within.
So the matador would be Gilgamesh, and yeah. I get you. Yeah. Interesting.
Because there's no really, apart from the practical reasons of why those societies say they do what they do. It's a very, it's a performance, isn't it? So it's almost because it's in a circular arena, and it has a crowd.
And it's reenactment, isn't it? That's basically what it is. Yeah. So yeah, Ishtar and her husband.
That's very cruel.
Yeah, very cruel. Tammuz. So in the Sumerian text, it's Inanna and Dumazil, I think that is. Eyes are going wiggly. So they are Ishtar and Tammuz are the kind of characters in the world's oldest love story. So the story of the goddess's journey to the underworld. This is the home of her sister. Get this right. Erishkigal. Erishkigal. You try it, you see. So don't forget, they don't like each other, yeah? So there have been numerous debates about what was the reason for her going to the underworld to visit her sister, who she did not like, yeah? Some say it is most likely that she was motivated by the ambitious desire to increase her own powers. But as I go through the notes, you'll see that there could be other reasons for it. Yeah. So the goddess travels through the 7 gates of the underworld and removes an item from her being as she goes, so that when she arrives before her sister, she is naked. So that's one of the reasons why she is depicted as either very scantily clad or naked. Yeah. So her sister, Ereshkigal, just kills her. Yeah, kills her sister. So the death of the goddess of love leaves her trapped in the underworld and requiring a rescue. Da-da-da! So, with the assistance of her faithful companion, Ninshaba, Ishtar is revived through the clever plotting of the god of wisdom, E. That's E-A, yeah? And in Sumerian, that is Inki, yeah? So Ishtar's place in the underworld cannot be left empty. There has to be someone to fill that space, yeah? So the deity rides along with a group of demons to search for a replacement. Following a long search, her consort, Tammuz, is sent to the underworld in her place. So, other interpretations, because this is all from text that is not in English. Don't forget that. So, these things are open to interpretation. So, it parallels the Persephone myth. So, there's a parallel with the Greek story. So, one of the interpretations is Ishtar is forced to visit her sister.
Is it with Hades?
Yes. So she's forced to go and visit her sister in the underworld and ultimately experience death. But there are so many variations. Sometimes it said her motive, and I suppose the motive would change over the ages depending on the frame that it's been put in. So sometimes it is seen as a lust for power and her sister's throne, although why you'd want to be queen of the underworld, I don't know. In other versions of the story, her lover, Tammuz, has been whisked away to the underworld by the demon Gala, and she must make an attempt to rescue him. In other versions, Ishtar flies into a jealous rage over Tammuz's popularity with the humans, and she dooms her lover to life in the underworld. So as Ishtar travels through the 7 gates of the underworld, she is forced to give up all earthly things, all emblems of power, and become naked and helpless in death. So Ishtar is ultimately rescued from death and reborn, but Tammuz is forced to remain in the underworld for half the year as her substitute. So during the half of the year that the shepherd god is in death, the earth above remains barren and fruitless. So it's a bit like when we go into the underworld at Samhain and we come up, well, it feels like we're still in the bloody underworld with this freezing cold weather right now. But there's, there are parallels everywhere. Another kind of idea is that Tammuz wasn't her husband. He was one of her lovers. And he died young. So because he's a grain in this particular version, he's a grain god. So his death as a young man parallels the death of the grain. So the grain is cut just before it reaches the perfect ripeness. So there's a relationship there between him and how they grew grain. And some legends imply that Ishtar had a hand in his death. So what would the framework be around that would make that the interpretation that people would have? There we go. But Ishtar was inconsolable and determined to fetch him back from the underworld. And each of the 7 gates of the land of the dead, Ishtar was required to give over an article of clothing or jewelry until finally she came naked and humble before her sister, who then imprisoned Ishtar. She didn't kill her, she imprisoned her. And then the world mourned for the lost goddess of love, and her father, Sin, the moon god, sent an envoy armed with powerful magic who successfully rescued her. Tammuz was eventually also brought back to live in the land of the gods, and the descent of Ishtar was celebrated annually in Babylonian lands. So another version. So this time in this version, Tammuz is Ishtar's beloved husband, who died young. Yeah. And after a time, Ishtar fell in love with the great king Gilgamesh, who rejected her. Ishtar decided to descend to the underworld to be with Tammuz. So, dressed in her finest garments, jewelry and crown, Ishtar entered the cave that leads into the underworld. The underworld was surrounded by 7 walls, each with its own gates that had to be passed to get to the dark place where the dead resided. At each gate, Ishtar was required to give up one of her possessions. Now, interestingly, she gives up the most valuable things first. So at the first gate, she gave up her crown. At the second gate, she gave up her necklace, the 8-pointed star. At the third gate, she gave up her golden bracelets. At the fourth gate, she gave up her shoes. At the fifth gate, she gave up her veil. At the sixth gate, she gave up her outer robe. And at the 7th gate, she gave up her dress. So she gave up what people would call the most valuable things first, which is interesting, I think. So Ishtar enters the underworld naked and powerless. Her love for Tammuz and her previous life was forgotten, and she was covered in feathers and dust. the light of the world was completely gone, and Ishtar was in darkness. As soon as Ishtar entered the underworld, life on earth began to change. Love and desire, birdsong, animal procreation, and lovemaking between husbands and wives stopped, and the gods were unhappy. The great god, A, created a creature that was fearless and sent it into the underworld to rescue Ishtar. The goddess was returned to earth and was even stronger than before. So it's really interesting how these different interpretations paint Ishtar in very different lights. There's shades there. So on one extreme, she's hell bent on revenge, and all the way to the other one is she's trying to reunite with her dead husband. You know, it's like somewhere in there is the true Ishtar. You know, it's who isn't being framed by some, I don't know, institution, if you like. So aside from those two stories, there are other pieces of evidence. She appears in royal hymns, for example. Quite a few myths, prophetic texts, magic spells, and even proverbs. And there were some early poems as well, written by, there we go, here's a name, Enheduanna, the first known author to be individually identified around 2300 BC. And she was a priestess of the moon god and the daughter of Sargon of Akkad. There we go. Symbols sacred to the goddess include the morning and evening star, Venus, the moon, the stars, snakes, scorpion, dove, the lion, a pack of hunting dogs, which is really interesting because so you could see her as a psychopomp. If she's associated with hunting dogs, then she is a psychopomp. How do I know that? Well, Hecate has hounds, Odin has hounds, Arwen has hounds, Arianrod doesn't, actually. She has spiders. So you could see Inanna as a psychopomp. Also a bow and quiver. So Ishtar's really good if you are wanting clarity and direction. But I'll get onto that a little bit further on. Her themes are love, sexuality, war, creation, guardianship, healing, abundance, fertility, justice, and the moon. She is the queen of heavens, the morning star, the evening star, the shining star of Venus. But she is also the queen of the earth, the fertility, and the abundance of life. So she's not just one thing. A lot of deities are not just one thing. They have, they're multifaceted. Some more kind of south-facing, if you like. Bridget is an example of that. And Bridget, just a little side note, Bridget is all about the hearth and the home and healing and poetry and all those amazing things. But she is also a protector of women and children. So if you need any kind of protection around, if you're a woman and your children, call her. She is fucking fierce. And I know that from personal experience. So her symbols, back to Ishtar, her symbols are the 8-pointed star, the moon, lions, doves, Um, she likes a flame as well. She does like flame. It's the light. Um, because she brings the light to the world. Hence why when she was in the underworld, the world went dark. Yeah. So a single flame or 8 candles is really good. In Babylon, Ishtar encompasses the fullness of womanhood, including being a maternal nurturer, an independent companion, an inspired bed partner, and an insightful advisor in matters of the heart. So having descended from Venus, so that's the planet that governs many things actually, not just romance and love, but also friendship, music, poetry, the creative things, emotional intelligence, to some degree, your subconscious, to some degree. She is the moon, the morning star, and with the morning star, which is during the summer, she brings the fiery sword of war. And the evening star, so when she's shining in the winter, in the evening, that's the inspiration for lovers everywhere to stop for a moment and look to the heavens and dream. There's that real romance to it. Also, surprisingly enough, Saturn Day, was Ishtar's traditional temple day. Not Friday as you might think. The reason for that? I'm not sure actually. Saturn corresponds to the Earth. Saturn also corresponds to protection with its rings, its golden rings. Go and do some research if you want to know why Saturday was Ishtar's traditional temple day. So in the temples of Ishtar, statues of the deity were offered lavish meals. So, when we are doing offerings now, we offer food from our table. Or, we might make or bake something specific for deity. We might offer them things like cacao, for example, or quite exotic, the right word? Opulent kind of foods, like I'm looking over there because there's someone that walked over there. Cacao and like really nice things to eat. So in the temple, the priests, the priestesses, and other servants to the gods would prepare very large feasts in anticipation of an offering. Idols of the gods. So this is quite funny. Idols of the gods, which lived in the inner sanctum of the temple, were given privacy behind a curtain so they could go and wash up before dinner. It's really funny. And then the curtains were open so that the meal could be served, and then closed again so the gods could enjoy their food and drink in privacy. That's quite cute, isn't it? And then once the food had been used in ritual, it was then given out to the staff of the temple. And some historians even believe that this feast would also have been recycled for royal events. Well, it'd have to be the same day, otherwise the food's going to go off. In the kind of, I don't know, was it hot in Mesopotamia? I think it might have been. I'm not sure I'd want, why would you give the royals food that had been left out for a day? Maybe they wanted to kill them. I don't know. Anyway, during the festival of Ishtar, which is celebrated from the new to the full moon phase nearest the spring equinox. The people of Sumer and Babylon celebrated life and fertility. As part of the festivities, the En partook in the divine union. So that's what I was talking about earlier, the king. The general populace was encouraged to be fruitful. So a bit like Beltane in here.
Cornucopia.
Yeah, fruitful as in go out into the fields and make love, darling. Like Beltane. The Babylonians feasted and gave offerings of food and drink to the goddess of love and fertility, and there was a huge procession leading to the temple at Uruk. It sounds amazing. So one of the surviving ritual songs describes the procession, perhaps at dusk when the new moon and the evening star shine together in the sky. That's really cool. Everyone in Sumer is there to honour her, making a joyful noise with harp and drum and timpani. Soldiers and priestesses, respectable couples, as opposed to not respectable people. Youths with hoops. What were they doing with hoops, I wonder? Were they hula hooping? Is it early hula hooping phrase going on there, maybe? Maidens and male prostitutes fluttering coloured scarves. It sounds amazing, doesn't it? The people, complete with jump ropes and coloured cords, men and women wear each other's clothing. And why not? It probably looks the same, to be honest. They're probably all wearing togery type things, aren't they? Then the light of heaven appears. My lady, look in sweet wonder from heaven. She looks in sweet wonder on all the lands and on the people of Sumer, as numerous as sheep. Oh, that was quite funny. So, I've got a couple more pages. So you can call on Ishtar to guide you on your personal journey, to understand and integrate the denser parts of your being, because it's all part of you. Obviously, the bits that don't belong to you and aren't yours, you need to get rid of those because they're not yours. But she will support you with that. She will support you with her radiance and will also encourage you to switch on your own light. Because that's what, what we're walking through at the moment is what that's about, yeah? And she'll give you the courage to face your what do you call that? Your demons, if you like. She will help you to strip away the veils of illusion, the veils of the overlay. She'll help you to strip off the overlay so that you may see the truth and allow the light to enter. So what's interesting about that is she was stripped of her overlay when she went into the underworld, which is how she then knows how to strip back the overlay, the veneer, yeah.
I think it always begs the question as well, who was she giving it to? Who was she giving the crown to? And who was controlling the gates? Because it doesn't really say about that, does it?
It doesn't.
I conveniently left that bit out.
Maybe they were servitors of her sister. That then reported back to the sister with the goods.
Yeah, but why are they described as a gate? It sounds like a nice little wooden gate that you.
Well,
with a little person there. So, I quite like that crown. I have to have a crown before you come through.
Yeah, it's like paying the ferryman, isn't it?
Yeah.
But essentially, it's portal. I would suggest.
No, it's the crown. If you look at the list, because you can, I suppose what I'm saying in this segment is you can run over bits quite quickly, but it's a crown, the representation of
her sovereignty.
And the sovereignty.
Yeah.
And then
which is the first thing that she gives,
Mm.
which would suggest to me that she's not this. You know, she might have a, you know, she might be slightly militant, but she's not this vengeful, you know, like harpy that a lot of people paint her as. Because she the first thing that she gave was she gave herself. She gave her whole self to move into the underworld. That's not the action of a psychopath.
And also, what's quite interesting as well with like the breeding season is why is it at one specific time in the year? I find that quite fascinating.
And it's earlier in the year than it is here, for example. But that, I'd say that's the weather. You know, here it's pretty fucking cold, you know, in January. You're not going to be gallivanting and cavorting in the fields in January, are you? Because you'd freeze your pits off. Whereas, you know, Mesopotamia, I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine the you know, it was quite a stable temperature.
Yeah, but
possibly.
If you're looking at the ancient Sumerian gods as, you know, the ones that produced man, then, you know, it might be that they're the right conditions, like scientifically, the right conditions for
the right time to.
Yeah, because it's not just the weather. I mean, you know, beings become active at that particular time as well.
Yeah.
Like something enacted in their body.
Yeah, in that part of the world.
Yeah, and also, you know, like that there is ritual around it and celebration.
Very much like Beltane.
Yeah.
It's got a very Beltane feel to it. Because that's one of the times when the veil is thin, where you can go into the underworld, visit your ancestors, and do some path working in the underworld. It's very interesting. So to honour Ishtar, if you want to honour Ishtar and connect with Ishtar, give her offerings of food and drink. You can use songs, like joyful songs, not like, you know, the Smiths. Don't use the Smiths to pay homage to Ishtar. Do not do that. So songs that uplift you. If you know how to play the harp, play the harp. Drum's good.
I was walking down the street.
Please don't do that. Surrounding yourself with beautiful things and beauty. So when I say beautiful things, I don't mean going out and, you know, like, I don't know, just, you know, make your home beautiful. That doesn't, you know, need to cost thousands of pounds. You can also dedicate your lovemaking to Ishtar. You can set an intention to do that. If you have any kind of jewellery with moon and stars and the sun on it, for example, you can wear that in honour of Ishtar. Wear your most amazingly loveliest, phantasmagorical clothes. That is a word. You know, if you love essential oils, make up an amazing perfume oil and wear that in honour of Ishtar. Offer her some as well, because I'm sure she'd like that. You could find and download or create a picture of an 8-pointed star or a mandala and set that. You know, we have a very small space over there where Ishtar is, and she's got her 8-point pointed star which faces out, because that gets charged once a year, to send light out to the world. Ishtar is facing in behind that, and then there's a couple of other things. There's some what are they called? Meteorites. So that's bits of the universe in a little dish thing. There's a golden key, because she is someone who can help you open the doors with a Hiram key. Yeah. So there's a golden key, and there's also a lantern with a candle in it. I think there's something else. Can't remember what it is. I think some dried chili peppers or something. I don't know. So there are many things that you can, use as visual things to connect you to Ishtar. So obviously the planet Venus is one of those things. So you can get some pictures of the planet Venus and put those up if you want. 8-pointed star. Sacred animals. So you've got dolphins, lions, snakes, scorpions, hedgehogs. Don't know why. I don't know if they have hedgehogs in Mesopotamia. Hunting dogs, lions, dragons. Dragons is a good one. The numbers 7 and 15. The dove. Stones. Lapis lazuli. If you want to plant something for Ishtar, plant a fig tree, which is really interesting, because someone gifted us a fig tree which we planted in our garden, and then later on in the year we found these they're like concrete 8-pointed stars, and we put them in front of the fig tree, not realizing, because when I did a bit of research, I'm like, Ian, you do know what we've got in the garden, don't you?
A fig tree.
So we've got 8-pointed stars and a fig tree for Ishtar. Offerings, incense, wine, beer, sweet things. So, you know, sweet cake or biscuits or anything sweet, really. So that's if you want to connect with Ishtar. You might want to do some artwork in relation to Ishtar. That's how Ian connected with her. So the imagery in artistic works, she actually comes up quite a lot on grave goods, because she is connected to the underworld, and you could say she's a psychobomb. She also appears alongside kings in royal iconography, which is interesting, because she has that relationship with the king. Yeah. So, part of the reason that Ishtar is depicted as naked or scantily clad is it suggests that that's the stage in the myth of the descent into the underworld where she is either close to death or she's on her way back out of the underworld. So that is why when it's depicted with, you know, naked or without many clothes on, because that was the kind of, if you like, that was the pinnacle of her journey. So it represents a turning point, a key, if you like. Also, in many myths, the goddess is closely associated with vengeance, justice, and the maintenance of cosmic order. Now, I like that. Also in artwork, she might have with her her animal is the lion. That's one that features quite heavily. She very often carries weapons in artwork. And sometimes she's even presented as standing on top of a lion, sometimes with a bow and a quiver with arrows. She also appears as the 8-pointed star, and with rosettes as well. Now I'm guessing when pagans were kind of demonized, they had to find secret ways of paying homage to their deities. So rather than have a statue of Ishtar, they had a rosette, which wasn't as obvious. So they were still honouring their deities, but in a way that wasn't obvious to the church. I like that. Now that's me extrapolating. Doesn't say that in any research I did, but it's like, why? Why would you have a rosette to represent Ishtar? Not an 8-pointed star, nothing, no wings, no nothing, just a rosette. Because we know that in times when pagans were persecuted, they had to go underground a little bit. Am I right or am I right?
Well, you could. I mean, you could argue that what does a rosette represent?
Well, it's an open flower.
So if you're then pinning it on somebody, you know what? Somebody,
you're pinning Ishtar to them.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
You know, I think, like the seed of these things. You know, are very ancient.
Yes, definitely.
Although we don't realise that. That's why everything is magic.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons why everything is magic. It's funny actually, because I was just looking at the Smiths.
Oh no.
And I was, it kind of sort of, the Smiths song, Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, is a little bit reminiscent of the story that you
told. Descent into the underworld.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I was happy in a haze of a drunken hour, but heaven knows I'm miserable now. I was looking for a job, or as in going through the underworld, and then I found a job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. In my life, why do I give valuable time to people who don't care if I live or die? Two lovers entwined passed me by, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. I was looking for a job, and then I found a job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. In my life, oh, why do I give valuable time to people who don't care if I live or die? What she asked of me at the end of the day, Caligula would have blushed. Oh, you've been in the house too long, she said, and naturally I fled. In my life, why do I smile at people who'd I'd much rather kick in the eye? I was happy in the haze of a drunken hour, but heaven knows I'm miserable now. Oh, you've been in the house too long, she said, and I naturally fled. In my life, oh, why do I give valuable time to people who don't care if I live or die?
Oh dear, that's funny. Maybe he was a disciple of Ishtar. So, Ishtar's star is often depicted alongside a sun disk and a crescent-shaped moon. So that represents her brother, the solar deity, Shamash, and her father, the moon deity, Sin. Okay? So keep your eye out, or create a sun disk and a crescent-shaped moon. Might do that myself. So because Ishtar is kind of obscure, and although there are a lot of stories, they're not as you can tell by, you know, what I was talking about earlier, the interpretations of those stories, they're going to be wildly different, poles apart. So because of that, her idea, the idea of Ishtar and her image can be found a lot in the sci-fi genre and the fantasy genre as well. So it's really interesting how it's almost like it's almost like it's done her a favor, because she can cross many oceans with her energy, with her presence, because she can't be pinned down to one thing because of this, you know, vast interpretation of her stories and mythology.
I think also she epitomises this idea of the like fractal nature.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and she epitomises that, doesn't she? It's like,
Yeah.
And stories in general epitomise that, don't they? They have that fractal element. Story's told, and it's like it changes, but it's always fundamentally the same story, but many different versions of it. Which is that fractal nature, or the idea of change.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I said earlier, she's connected to the planet Venus, which, you know, Venus itself isn't just about love or sexual love. It's many different things. So it's friendship. It's, you know, the love of what you do in life, for example. You know, emotional intimacy. You know, creating loving bonds, like the bond of Ishtar and the king, for example, or Ishtar and her servant Ninshaba. So connecting the goddess to the historical Mesopotamian king was a unique bond. So it blended roles of mother, wife, sister, and her affections were deemed to protect those that those that she cared for, binding together families, communities, and empires in powerful ties that persevered even beyond death. So you could say that Ishtar is very competent in using social connections to serve her own ambitions, but also to serve her community. And it's given her a very distinctive feel. You're right there, Smith. Dog's having a moment. And that comes all the way from ancient Mesopotamia to now. Yeah, when you look at social networking, yeah. So her identity as a powerful female deity, alongside her mastery of social networking, makes the appreciation of this very ancient goddess very topical for now, for what we call the modern day. So you could certainly call on Ishtar if you wanted to create, you know, community, or to bring family together, anything like that, or to, I don't know, if you aspire to be an influencer, you know, not not a benevolent one. Let's say that. Because I'd imagine Ishtar isn't going to be anything involved in anything that was particularly insidious. Yeah, and it was just very interesting when I just put her name into a search engine, and all these things came up, and it's like her whole energy in her name is rippling through time and space, and is, you know, on the front of restaurants and 5-star hotels. It's just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So just to finish, I want to give credits to Rosalind Grimaldi, a website called Journeying to the Goddess, and the World History Encyclopedia for the research I did on that. But it was really interesting. I think I'm going to do more of this, actually, because I really enjoyed it. Yeah, what do you think, Ian? Anything to add to that?
I think it was all.
Cool. So if you ever want to know, you know, more about connecting with deity, or, you know, want to know more about what we do, there's links below in the description, in fact. Well, there should be. If there aren't, then I'll put them in there. Yeah, come and say hello. I hope you've enjoyed this talk. We didn't get anyone on the Skype, so we couldn't have a discussion with others. But, you know, feel free to have a discussion in the comments below. Don't forget to do that if you liked it. And, you know, share it if you want. If you don't, that's cool. So we'll see you in the next one. And, yeah, blessings.